The economic fate of every country depends on two things: the central bank and policy. In China's case, due to their communist culture, policies became stronger and that changed the country.
In other news, China's gross domestic product jumped in the first quarter of this year.
Now, China has announced that it is going to increase its military spending by 7%.
The country's economy opened up to the rest of the world, a move that ultimately turned China into a global economic powerhouse, second in GDP only to the United States.
In the US, well, their central bank, specifically the dollar, is the reason why the country remained a dominant country for a long time. But in India's case, something different, something unusual happened. India has added a new dimension to the entire system. And that change was technology. We added that to policy and the central bank. Think about it. Almost every important event is being run using technology. Think about UPI, the digital locker, the DigiLocker, Aadhaar, and even the largest vaccination drive for COVID in the world. All of these were made possible due to a special team. This band of superheroes are no less than the Avengers or Justice League. They call themselves ISpirit, the Indian Software Product Industry Roundtable. Now, we'll talk about them a bit later, but now their plan is to kill the US dollar. And this might happen using the eRupee. That system, combined with rupee being used for trading across the globe, will change everything. In this video, we're going to talk about how the rupee is at the center of this global power play and how power will shift from the US to somewhere else. And India is right at the center of it. We'll explore this and also understand a lot of other things about the future of our country. So let's understand how we will kill the US dollar. But before understanding how the rupee will become a global power, I think it's interesting to just cover or just touch upon the history of the rupee. Originally, the rupee word actually is a derivative of rupiah kam, which is a Sanskrit word, which means silver coin. Then we go down to Chanakya's time. This is Chandragupta Maurya's time. Chanakya, as you know, was one of the first economists in our history, also created that popular treaty. That time, he created the silver, gold, copper, and lead coins. They all have their own names. Then we fast forward towards Sher Shah Suri, who defeated Humayun in the battle. Now, at this point, there was a 178-gram silver coin, which was called the rupiah. So now we're getting closer to the rupee. Then let's fast forward all the way to British rule. Now, the British tried to use the rupiah, but of course, they could not pronounce it. यार इनको क्यों नहीं pronounce करना आता? हम कोशिश करते.
The President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump.
So easy. But they changed the name from rupiah to rupee, and also stuck the king's photo in all of these notes that you see over here, including the coinage. Then came independence. We stuck with the word rupee, but of course, swapped it with Gandhiji's face, and that is there till today. We also got a lot of coinage. There was 1 paisa, 5 paisa, 10 paisa, etc. What was interesting about the coinage back then, especially at the time of the 1 anna, 2 anna, etc., the visually impaired could make the difference just by feeling it because they were all different shapes. After that, in the late 1980s, we got the 500 rupee notes, and then we had demonetization, which just recently happened. What was that? 2016, where the 500 rupee was banned, and we all had to stand in lines to get our own money. Now, those times were really tough for us, but something interesting happened. UPI. Everyone had to transact online. I remember everyone suddenly accepting a QR code saying my Paytm number is XYZ, and all these companies like BharatPay, Paytm, PhonePe were born. But UPI was not created by them. I know a lot of people think, yeah, UPI was created by one of these companies. It was not. It's actually an open source software created by the government of India, among many other softwares, to actually financialize India and turn the future much more brighter. In fact, these are the Avengers we were talking about, the ISpirit. If you go to their website, you can see ISpirit is a not-for-profit think tank. Bunch of smart dudes trying to change the country. And then we can see that they're trying to solve India's largest problems by finding solutions that can actually scale. Because India में लोग हैं, बहुत सारे. So scale makes sense. You can also see that in practical terms, they're trying to build a digital infrastructure for the government. And this is amazing because it's also led by Nandan Nilekani. iSpirit has built a bunch of things they call the India stack. Everything from eKYC, Aadhaar, UPI, even stuff like health stack and account aggregator, DigiLocker, you name it. Even when you go through that toll and you have the FASTag, that tech is also built by iSpirit. And remember, everyone who contributed to India. They didn't monetize on this. That's amazing, right? If you think that is, put something in the comment below. Maybe someone from iSpirit is watching. They'll also feel nice. I think they did a great job. Another interesting thing that happened during that time was everyone started to learn to invest in the market because very soon after that, that's 21, 22, we had COVID. And everything changed. And I think that was another time where India completely financialized and learned how to invest. And LearnApp's mission is simple. The Aam Aadmi should be able to get skills that they can't get anywhere else, especially the working professional. So we thought, why not accept only doers or people like you who are trying to change their lives into a 2-day program, which is absolutely free, but not everyone gets in. Basically, in these 2 days, we'll give you tasks to do over 2 days inside a live batch. Now, this batch happens on weekends, and you will learn the basics of trading and investing all the way till intermediate. You will not need to learn anything else after this unless you really want to go deeper. You will understand the risks in trading, the rewards in investing, how things work, and most importantly, you will learn by doing, not by listening. So if you want to actually change your life, you should go and apply. It may take 2 or 3 tries to get in, but I promise you, it is worth it. Anyway, going back to our iSpirit mission, what happened after that is in February 1st, 2022, our FM, Nirmala ji, said that she has a new thing that she's going to bring, and that was the CBDC, which is the central bank digital currency. Now, this is basically the digital version of the cash rupee, but it is digital. It can be used P2P, that means you can send money to me, and P2 merchant, that means you can send money to a company or a merchant without a bank intermediary. That's interesting. Of course, you need a partner bank to work with because you have to transfer money to your wallet, but that wallet isn't owned by the bank. You own it, and you can transfer from there in rupee terms. Now, this sounds very much like a UPI system, but actually, it's an infrastructure that the world is going to use. And that's what we're going to discuss today. And the RBI defines it as the e-rupi would offer features like physical cash, like trust, safety, settlement finality. As in the case of cash, it will not earn any interest and can be converted into other forms of money, like deposits with banks. Basically, it's cash, but in digital form, in your wallet. Now, this is happening domestically, but how will this happen all over the world? Well, one, we have the infrastructure now in place to send and receive money abroad. And there are a bunch of benefits for that. And we need something called the VOSTRO account. A VOSTRO account and a Nostro account basically allows us to send and receive money between countries. And we will use this trading infrastructure to make that happen.
Hi Boris, tell, how are you?
It's not Boris, it's Baris.
Fine man, it's Boris, I know.
It's not Boris, it's Baris.
Okay Boris, I got it. Tell.
What happened to the treaty? We're supposed to deal in 1,000 barrels. What happened to that?
Okay, got it. So to continue that treaty, we have to open a VOSTRO account for you, and for that we have to approach RBI.
VOSTRO Nostro. Yes, I remember that. But what is in it for me?
There are many advantages if you open that account. So suppose your money transfer between India and Russia gets free of cost. It's an advantage of opening that account. And same, if we talk about the currency conversion, then that too gets free of cost if you open a VOSTRO account.
Oh, that's good. Let's do it then.
But is there any demand for the rupee? I mean, if you go to Europe and you say, I want to pay for the pasta in a rupee, They probably won't accept it, but they probably accept $1 here and there, especially in Asian countries. How will the rupee actually get acceptance across the world? Well, before the pasta, you need acceptance from actual countries trading between themselves. And the biggest commodity here is oil. You'll be surprised to know, 15 years ago, the number of countries trading in rupee was 0. I'll say that again. 15 saal pehle, no country was trading in rupees. Today, that number is close to 8. Not bad, not bad. Nice applause. I can also see that because of the G20 meeting, over 30 countries have shown interest to trade in the rupee. Now, the moment that happens, we become a rupee reserve according to the global standards, and that is a big thing. We can also see that 17 of them have approached RBI to open their special VOSTRO accounts, which means we can actually start trading in rupee. Now, this is interesting. I think 60 or 70% of India's imports are crude oil. And that is done in dollars. Agar ye rupee mein ho jaye, if this happens in rupees, this will change everything. So imagine the RBI buying some oil or a lot of oil from the OPEC, where it has to essentially trade its rupees for dollars to make that purchase. Now, what will they do with the rupees that is being exchanged? There is no demand for it. So if let's say rupee is trading at 80 rupees, they don't get that spot price. They will get like a 78 or an 82 or some big discount or premium depending on whether they're buying or selling. So basically they're losing money on that transaction itself because there is no demand for the rupee. But if we start trading in rupees itself, then that premium loss that we're doing or that discount loss that's happening will not happen. So imagine, I don't know the actual number, but if the actual bill is say $400, $500 million a year, and there's say a 2 or 3% difference, in rupees, you're probably saving something like maybe $60 million a year, for example. So that slippage, at least in trading, we call this slippage, that slippage will actually be saved and we can use that money in the country and not in this nonsense that's happening right now. But I was also talking about a power shift. So let me explain this very quickly, okay? Now, I'm going to super simplify this just so you have context, okay? So if there's an economist in the house, please don't correct me. I am on purpose oversimplifying this. This is the US. And this is the rest of the world. Sorry, this is what they think. Aisa nahi hai. Lol. No, actually, this is the rest of the world. The US has made every single country in the world say that I want you to trade in US dollars. So everyone will accept US dollars, right? Although they have their own internal currency as well. They will all have their own US dollar acceptance rate. And this is US already printing. Now, the interesting thing is the US can continuously print a lot of cash because it's all being accepted as reserves across the world. But if all of them stop using it as a reserve, or at least the main countries stop using it as a reserve, कि भैया हमको US dollar नहीं use करना है, something like that, then all that dollar will have to go somewhere, right? So I'll do this with a different pen, and this time I'll do it red. All that dollar will go somewhere. And this will actually go back, I guess, into the economy, creating a lot of inflation percentage, which means their purchasing power between nations will reduce, their internal currency will reduce, etc., etc. And well, this is the pitfall that could happen in the future. But this is also the reason why the US is what it is. Everyone accepts the US dollar. But this will change something. That's the e-rupi. The world uses USD to trade. It creates demand for USD. It strengthens USD and increases the purchasing power of USA. So the Fed basically prints more notes. And this cycle continues. But now that cycle will break. Actually, the entire world is sick of this bully and de-dollarization is happening. You would have read Russia was saying they don't want to trade in USD anymore. India is already saying we will use the rupee. Other countries will also follow suit. And because we are a large purchaser of crude and other things, I think that power shift will happen more towards the east now that used to be in the west. Now, when de-dollarization happens and people start trading with the rupee, so now this is what happens, right? The rupee becomes the dominant currency among other currencies. with all of these trading partners, all of these countries. Now, when this happens, the IMF will say, I'll do it in this ink, the IMF will say, the chances of India as a nation failing becomes very low or lowers, the risk lowers. Therefore, if India wants to borrow money, we will do it at a lower interest rate for them because their currency is being accepted across the world. So this is very nice. We're able to access money from abroad. We're also seen by investors in a different light now. So when macro investors think about moving money between nations, India is on top of that list because China won't be because, China. And our credit worthiness has actually gone up. Another interesting thing happens is, American bonds issued by the government are called treasury bills also. So T-bills as they were called. Those interest rates would mostly decide the interest rates across the world of what does credit look like, right? Because so much money would go into it. Imagine if you have $100 million and you have to park a majority of that money. It's all the money you have as an institution, of course. Where will you park it? In crypto? I don't think so. In stocks? Probably not. In bonds? Yes. What's the safest bond? The government bond. So would you rather give it to, say, a Cuba type country or a Venezuela type country or a US type country? Of course, a US, right? Because you trust that country will not fail. Essentially, you're giving a loan when you're buying a bond. So when India becomes more creditworthy in the eyes of IMF, all those large investors, those pension funds, those hedge funds, those family offices view India as a possible place to invest and invest in Indian bonds we call G-SECs. And that brings a lot of liquidity from the world to India. And of course, that changes a lot. We will have money to actually spend. We could spend it on farmers. We could spend it on infrastructure and a lot of other things. So that's all that's happening with the rupee. If I missed something, please put it in the comments so we can learn from each other and enrich each other's lives. If you found this interesting, please give a like, give a subscribe, and please tell me in the comments that you have subscribed because we're putting way too much effort and we're not getting subscribers. It'd be nice to see you again in our next video. So, goodbye.